Let's test these levels. I actually didn't change anything from last week, so maybe we can set it exactly the same as what we had.
Hola, good morning.
Sounds pretty good. I like it.
Okay. My dad joke, I had it pulled up on my phone, but apparently it's a running thread, and so it's been refreshed a bazillion times, so now I don't remember what it was. And it was a really good one. Man. Maybe I can find it. Oh, here it is. I found it.
All right, let's kick this thing off. Coffee with the Coaches, episode 17. Put that phone on Do Not Disturb because we got a good one for you today. You don't want to be interrupted for this one. Mm-mm. All right, Paige. I was Googling dad jokes.
You're telling me you don't just come up with all of them on your own?
No, I get these from the internet. But what I did get was a definition of a dad joke. And it says, a dad joke is loosely defined as a groaner so corny that you basically need to own a pair of white New Balance sneakers, a cell phone belt clip, a coffee mug emblazoned with the phrase, world's best father, to actually find it funny. So I've been doing this right.
Oh, man.
But since you don't agree with the definition, let's hear
have your button-up shirt tucked into your pants.
But since you don't agree with this definition, let's hear your dad joke first.
Okay. Well, mine's quite a groaner. All right. What do you call a mom who tells dad jokes?
I don't know.
A faux pas. It's just so much funnier when I tell them.
Maybe your delivery's better. All right.
I think you've burned everybody out on your dad jokes.
I've just been doing it for too long. All right. I can't take my dog to the pond anymore because the dogs keep attacking him. I guess that's what I get for buying a purebred dog.
Because the ducks keep attacking him?
Yeah, the ducks.
You said dogs.
Did I? Oh, man, did I screw this joke up?
Like, what?
Ah, damn it. Okay. Well, yeah, it's
I'm pretty
supposed
sure you
to be.
said ducks, unless I misheard it.
We'll have to go back and re-listen to this. If I screwed up the delivery, that's my fault.
You Sam Thomas yourself.
Oh, man. I couldn't believe he destroyed the delivery on that one. He made up for it with enthusiasm, though.
I just imagine everybody's face watching that Facebook video like, man.
That's what I get for hanging out with Sam too long.
Yep.
I went and had coffee with him yesterday, and he was trying to tell me another joke, and he did the same thing. He screwed up the punchline.
So, Kelsey, congratulations to Kelsey.
Yeah, Kelsey just got engaged.
Yeah.
I guess this past weekend.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And she was talking about whenever she saw you guys having coffee or something. She walked up to Sam, and Sam was like he knew, but he didn't know if it had happened yet, and so he was just waiting on it.
Yeah.
And then she's like, so she showed him the ring, and he was like, in typical Sam fashion, which if you guys aren't watching on video, I just did the hands in the air and the excited shake like a girl does. Sam does.
Yeah, he actually did say that. He was like, man, that's the toughest part of my job is, the guy will come in to get an engagement ring, and then we've all just got to keep it a secret for however long. And, we want to get excited and congratulate, but we got to wait until that guy actually proposes.
Yeah.
So. But he actually said that to her.
That's funny.
Well,
I imagine it's hard.
We got a good topic for today.
Yeah.
We actually posted this on Instagram last week and asked for some recommendations, some feedback. Our topic this week is weird exercises. Is there a value in weird exercises? And so we put this on the gram last week and just asked for, what do you consider to be a weird exercise? And I know you phrased it a little bit differently than I did. I know you were asking, what do you think is an exercise that doesn't make any sense? And so those are really good ways to approach this. Just what do you think is weird? And also, what do you think has no value? And then I thought it would be really good for us to kind of talk about, is there a time and a place for it? Is this type of exercise just worthless? And, we could also kind of do the underrated, overrated thing as well. So We've actually compiled a pretty good list with this.
Yeah.
I got a lot of feedback on my Instagram with it, and of course, you and I had already made a list of things that we consider to be weird or we hear comments about a lot. So.
Yeah, I had a lot of people say Jefferson curls or the Jefferson lift and which is the deadlift, and then like Zerchers and kind of stuff we had already hit on a little bit. The actual like Jefferson deadlift wasn't one that we had like mentioned off the top of our head that one day. And so I was like, yeah, that's an interesting one. I forget about that one.
Yeah. That's one that I usually think of right away because, it's the world's worst deadlift for sure.
Very awkward.
And so it's definitely one of those ones that it looks strange for sure.
Yeah. So let's start at like the really basic ones.
Okay.
Like I think we can like just work from like body weight stuff up to like loaded things that feel awkward, because we're going to have probably more to say about the loaded stuff later on, because a lot of the awkward body weight stuff, sometimes it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So what's your like most awkward body weight exercise, or the weirdest one that you think or that was mentioned or that comes to mind?
Well, body weight. I should have sorted this out before.
I know I had to pull it all up and arrange it in a note so I knew where I was at.
I think the one that I heard fairly frequently was Cossack squats, and it was probably that Jefferson lift, the Jefferson curl or Jefferson deadlifts, different variations of that one. And I know that's a loaded one, but probably the one that came up a few times was the Cossack squat.
Yeah. I love Cossack squats. They're the best. They are the best.
Okay, so what do you like about that one?
Okay, so we'll just start with that one. So the Cossack or Cossack, I call it Cossack. I guess I don't know what the guy's actual name is.
I had
whatever.
like 3 different spellings of this one when I put out the thing on Instagram. There were 3 different people that mentioned that one, and they all spelled it differently.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure the actual guy's name is Cossack.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, hip thrust. That was the other one that came up a few times.
Whoever made up. Yeah, because it's like named after, I guess maybe that was somebody's last name, or it's actually a group of people, East Slavic speaking Orthodox Christian people is what they're called. Cossacks. But anyway, the Cossack squat is basically a side lunge. And so you're just squatting into one leg over to the side. This is going to be, we're going to have to be like describing these things as we go through this podcast. Maybe on the video you can like slap some pictures on it or something. But yeah, so this one I absolutely love for just training the lateral aspect of the quad, the ankle, in the hip. It has a lot to do with pressing off in a lateral fashion so that you really, really dial into those outer sides of the leg. Yeah. And which is something that, for people that struggle with like knee valgus when they squat, so like knee collapse, something like that can be really good to help train the outer side of the leg to help strengthen it and bring that knee out into a safer position as you're squatting. So that's one of my favorites for that. And just to dig into the hip, it strengthens the adductors, which are the inside of the thigh, which help bring the legs together also, but it helps give them length under some tension to help stretch them out. So that's one of the best ways that you can gain flexibility is loading something and moving through it in an eccentric fashion. So slowly squatting over to the side slowly lengthens that adductor, so if they're super tight, it helps give it some length.
Yeah, to me it's one of those ones that kind of exposes tightnesses and imbalances in a lot of people, because it's not a range of motion that we typically get ourselves into on a daily basis, because it's got your feet spread out wide and kind of like the splits, just as wide as you can go, I guess, and then just has you working from one side to the other. So I think a lot of people are really tight like that just because they don't widen their feet on a regular basis, and they definitely don't lean over to one side or the other with their squats. So And then, it may translate even better to people who do train in a gym regularly and do normal barbell squats and things like that. They're strong with their feet in a narrow position, but they don't ever widen them out. So it's just a good one to balance out positions that you don't typically get into.
Yeah, it has a lot of transfer over to other things. So if you're like somebody that you're tight inside the thighs, or you like have groin strains pretty often, or like it's really good for kind of jiu-jitsu guys and stuff to help get some length in that other direction, because they're constantly clamping their thighs down and stuff. So it's important to have that length on the opposite direction to help balance that out. So if you're one of those people that like hates doing them and you always skip them,
you probably need them the most.
You need them more than anybody else.
And I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, I've told you this story before, Paige, but I used to skip these a lot because I hated them. I was really bad at them. I was too tight. I felt unstable, and so I tried to get out of doing them.
Yeah.
And once I started doing them more regularly, it helped my hips so much. It helped my knees so much. And it got better pretty quickly once I started doing them semi-consistently. So I can definitely speak on this one. This one helped me a lot. And I used to talk mad trash about it because I just wasn't good at it. But once I started doing it, it helped me a ton.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a good one. Leading from there, the chair dip is another like kind of body weight exercise that can be honestly pretty dangerous for a lot of people, because it's hard to do correctly without having like eyes on you or somebody kind of watching over. There's really very few angles that you can do a chair dip that's kind of safe on the shoulder and the shoulder blade.
So the chair dip would be the one where you're kind of sitting in front of the chair and you have your hands back behind you, right?
Yeah, you're dropping your body weight down as your elbows are staying up higher than your shoulder. If you have a strong and stable base in the shoulder, they're not going to be as dangerous as somebody that just kind of has weaker shoulders and weak arm musculature and isn't going to be able to press themselves up out of that position. But I'm like, we'd never do this. And it's something that does actually kind of translate to everyday life. Because, I mean, how many times can you think of, like, you're next to a ledge and you want to get up on it, you want to sit on it. So you put your hands behind you and you help jump up to it. Well,
that's the conundrum I'm in with this one. Because I really hate this as a training modality in the gym. I can definitely see some carryover where you'd need to do this in real life. But what I don't like is a whole bunch of them, like a whole bunch of reps of them. If you're doing 25 to 50 of them in a day, man, they get away from you quick. And I've had two people that I've heard that I know personally that were doing some kind of follow along video thing at home that ended up aggravating their shoulder. One lady aggravated her shoulder and the other one aggravated her elbow, surprisingly, doing this just at home, following along with a video.
Yeah, 100%. So like there is kind of a safer way to do it. You have to have some sort of foundational strength first. Like you need to be able to do probably at least 8 push-ups in a row without any like leg assistance or any knee assistance. You need to be able to kind of dip your body weight with your arms to the sides. So like putting one chair on one side and one on the other is going to be a much safer position.
Getting your body
shoulder.
In between your hands instead of out in front of your hands.
Back behind. Yeah, instead of having the hands back behind. Now, I will say that it can be a good like tricep training exercise just if you rotate to where your thumb is actually facing forward. So you have your shoulder kind of in a more externally rotated position, which is kind of hard to explain, but imagine when you put your hands behind you and you have your thumbs facing your butt. Well, if you kind of rotate where your thumbs are facing a little bit more forward and then you kind of dip and drive out of that position, you can really dig into that tricep in that position. But nobody's going like super, super low in that because there's almost no option but to have your shoulder blade and your shoulder girdle like crawl up and over towards towards your clavicle on the front side, and that's just not a very safe position on the shoulders.
So we would say this one has value, but it's got a lot of specifications in order to be valuable. So you got to be careful with this one at home by yourself.
It's totally not one of those exercises that you need to like watch some Insta-ho doing and then just, and then just like mock it because you're like, oh yeah, okay, and then you're letting your shoulders come up around your ears and like just not keeping good positions while you do it. You have to set your shoulder blades back into position, hold them there, and then be able to flex and extend with keeping them down away from your ears. And it's very difficult to do. So if it's something that you like really, really want to do, make sure you really, really dig into it and build that foundational strength first.
Okay, before we get too far away, we gotta keep up with this underrated, overrated thing as we go along.
Oh yeah.
So,
I forgot.
chair dips. What would we say?
Overrated.
Would you say overrated? Mm-hmm. I would too, because I do see these way too much on at-home workout videos. Mm-hmm. So I would say overrated for sure.
There's a lot of other ways you can train that.
Yeah. So jumping back to the Cossack squat, would you say overrated or
underrated? 100%.
Underrated. Mm-hmm. I really don't see these a lot on the internet, so I would probably agree. I think they are underrated because I don't see them nearly as often as I do chair dips, for instance, and I think they're way more valuable than chair dips.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely becoming more and more popular. People are realizing the benefit of training in those different planes and stuff, but it's still underrated.
All right, body weight stuff. Bear crawls. I had this one come up on my Instagram. This was the first one that came in. Was somebody said, what was it? Bear crawls are awkward and weird, or something like that. Yeah, bear crawls are weird and awkward. Speak on that one, Paige.
I love bear crawls.
Why you like it?
So a bear crawl, when performed, I'm going to explain, there's kind of two different ways you can perform it. Well, there's a lot of ways you can perform it, actually. But what you usually see is either somebody's got their butt way up in the air, and they're just flopping and, like, running on their hands and their feet, and their butt's moving side to side, and they're just going, like, all wonky. That's okay. It's not like, I don't think there's anything dangerous about it as long as you have some strength and stability in your shoulders. But it
can be way better.
Yeah, it can be way better. If you're doing it like that, then maybe, if you're just doing it to like get some cardio in or something, cool, whatever. But I think what has better benefit for basically anybody doing a bear crawl is to get the knees down low. So knees just about 1 or 2 inches off the ground, holding the core super, super stable. So you've got your weight posted on your hands and on your toes, but your knees are just hovering about a couple inches off the ground. And if you try this right now while you're listening to this, it's challenging just to hold that position right there.
Just if you're on your toes and your hands with your knees just like an inch off the ground?
Yeah. And then from there, if you can take a step with an opposite hand and opposite foot, nice small steps without letting your hips or your shoulders drop and move and shift from side to side. This movement is fantastic for teaching core stability while your limbs are in movement. And so this really, really helps, especially on carryover to things like deadlifts, to squats, to kipping pull-ups, like absolutely anything, because it teaches that core, keeping your core stationary and tight and stable while you have your limbs moving in free space. And so that has carryover to absolutely everything you do with a weight. So it's a super important and foundational exercise. I think it is extremely underrated.
Yeah, I would say this one's absolutely underrated because
we should do more of them.
Yeah, it's like when you're a toddler, when you're an infant, you learn how to crawl, then you learn how to walk, and it's like a lot of people never go back to crawling, and just having that what is that, quadrupedal type of movement is that's a really valuable thing to maintain.
For sure.
It's not one that you ever plan. That's not a position or a method of travel that you would ever plan to get into, but when you need it, you really need it. And so it's one of those things you shouldn't just ignore for 40 years because when you get down like that, it's because something's wrong and you need to be able to do something. And so I think it's absolutely something that you should train on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're going to be doing more of those in warm-ups and stuff. Sorry, guys.
So
talking about this just gets me really hyped up to go program right now.
So underrated on the bear crawl, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
For sure.
Your turn. Where are we going from here?
Let's see. How about... This one's still body weight. I mean, you need a bar for it, or a rig bar, but how about kipping pull-ups and jumping pull-ups? We get a lot of flack for this in CrossFit, so I think this is a good one to talk about.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it, Michael?
Honestly, I don't even see the flack so much anymore. But in the earlier days of CrossFit, for sure, everybody was talking trash about kipping pull-ups, like, oh, that's not a pull-up, or those are cheating pull-ups, or all these different, different things because it just looked different. And I don't see that nearly as much anymore because CrossFit has become way more commonplace and it's just a lot more visible on the internet. So people are used to seeing it more. But you still do have occasional shitheads that make comments like that. But I definitely think they're valuable. It's a time and a place, of course. I would never say that a kipping pull-up was the only way to do pull-ups. That would be absurd. I think strict pull-ups are more valuable than kipping pull-ups, but I think kipping pull-ups are still a valuable training exercise. It allows you to get more reps in. It allows you to, if we're going to use the word hypertrophy, it lets you get some more reps in like that. But it also lets you mix in some more things in a cardio or conditioning type of workout. So
Yeah.
I might say they were overrated, though, at this point, because CrossFit has been around for a while and it has become a lot more commonplace, and all those reasons why it doesn't get shit-talked as much as it used to has kind of made it overrated because there's a lot of people that just want to jump straight to a kipping pull-up when they haven't even attempted to work on their strict pull-up strength yet. So there's too many people that try to get straight to it.
Yeah.
I would say overrated.
I totally agree. I 100% agree. I think that kipping pull-ups are overrated and strict pull-ups are underrated in CrossFit.
CrossFit, that's
outside
a
of
good
CrossFit,
qualifier.
it's the opposite. So, outside of CrossFit, there are some people out there that could actually benefit from doing some kipping pull-ups who, if you can do multiple strict pull-ups in a row, well, you could milk some more training volume out of giving yourself a little kip to the top and just milking that eccentric on your rep. So if you get to a set of 15 pull-ups and you're like, oh, I can't pull anymore, and your goal is to do 20 pull-ups in a row, well, if you can kip your way to the top for the last 5 and milk that eccentric, you're going to be a little bit closer to being able to do 20 strict pull-ups in a row at some point later on. So I think it kind of blends in the two. So in the CrossFit space, they're definitely overrated. They're programmed way too often, I think. And strict pull-ups are kind of the opposite. They are underrated and need to be programmed more often. That baseline strength. People just don't understand how much transfer training the strict pull-up has to the kipping pull-up.
Oh, yeah.
Making that strict pull-up more difficult as you go through, like today on our strength work, gaining an extra inch in range of motion and making that rep really, really hard while you're just training to get better, so that when in competition you can fly through it. You're gonna find people who are doing their strength work in the gym, taking it super slow, going super strict, making all their reps perfect, full range of motion, exaggerating your range of motion safely sometimes. And it looks like they're really not doing a lot. And then it comes down to competition day and they're smoking these other people who are just doing half rep push-ups and pull-ups and things like that, because they're not holding themselves to a standard. And so that's getting on a soapbox, but it's just something that is very underrated within CrossFit. That full range of motion. So kipping reps, overrated in CrossFit, underrated outside of the gym.
Well, now how would this translate? How would this translate to jumping pull-ups?
Jumping pull-ups is another. I think it's kind of one and the same with kipping pull-ups. Jumping pull-ups within a workout is a way to to increase the cardiovascular, the metabolic conditioning, in air quotes, side of a workout. Strict pulling definitely shouldn't be neglected. So anytime there are kipping pull-ups in a workout, unless we're doing box jumps or burpees or something else, also a jumping pull-up can be a good alternative to a kipping pull-up, just because it helps you get those reps, helps you keep moving quickly through a workout without standing there staring at the bar trying to struggle bust your way through your reps. And so that's a good way to kind of get your heart rate up safely, because you're not putting a whole lot of stress on the shoulders when done correctly.
So, overrated on both of those, you
yes.
think, right? Okay. All right, so this made me think, this one wasn't on our list, but this one right here made me think of, and this is probably just from the overrated, underrated perspective, but box jumps. I know it's not a weird exercise, but I kind of think it's overrated. What do you think about that? I think you probably disagree with me on this one.
I think it's overrated in the wrong sense. Like doing 20 box jumps in a row. Yeah,
box jumps
overrated.
For cardio.
Yeah.
I think is overrated.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Unless it's like like doing for people that are extremely fit, that's a great form of cardio. But you got a gym full of people, like even that workout we did last Saturday, we had burpee box overs and what was it, 10 at a time, I think. And so we made them kind of low just so people can keep moving through it. If you can burpee and then hop up and over like that, then that's a good way to keep moving through it. But if you're burpee, and then heaving your way onto the box, there's more efficient ways to kind of continuously move through a workout. And so I personally, when I program them outside of the open thing, I've tried to keep them kind of lower and not super whatever. But I think tall box jumps for explosive power are underrated, and they're never done correctly.
Yeah, actually, I guess we do agree on this. Maybe I'm carrying old baggage from early CrossFit, but it seemed like there were a lot of people that just, they wanted to do sets of 50 on box jumps, just box jump, back down, especially those rebound ones, tons of rebound type of stuff.
Yeah.
I used to see that a lot. And, now that we're talking about it, I realize I don't see that stuff nearly as often anymore. But
I think once everybody started popping their Achilles,
that's it.
The whole rebound thing.
Yeah, a lot of people
down.
realize how messy that can get.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how strong or agile you are, the risk is there and it's real. So that just terrifies me. And I'll give that preface to a class, and then inevitably, there's one person or two people throughout the day that are like, I just get rebounded. I'm like, okay, don't say I didn't tell you.
Yeah, and I guess before I move on from that one, I would agree. I think the tall box jumps for explosive power, underrated. Yeah. I really like doing those in sets of 1 to 3, just one to 3 really tall box jumps, But when I say that, I'm talking about, actually trying to jump high. I'm not talking about just arbitrarily setting a high box and then trying to get my feet up high. Yeah. I made a video on Instagram about this a few weeks ago. But
you have really good hip flexion. Good job.
But I do think they're valuable if you use them correctly.
Yeah. So. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a really, really tall box jump isn't really that impressive if you're just basically doing a knee tuck and you catch yourself on top of it and then you squat up out of it. Okay, sure, whatever. But if you can land up there in a
half squat or higher,
squat and then stand, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I see that you put most ab exercises.
Actually, that was you.
Or is that me?
That was you. This is when we were talking about this last week.
Oh, yeah. There's all kinds of funky ab exercises out there that are very interesting. And I think just for shits and giggles, most of them are they're just fun to do. It's a different way to hit your core. And I think it's...
Make it feel like you're working your abs.
Yeah. And people always want to work their abs. And so I think it's just fun stuff to throw out there. And it's usually if you're doing it a couple times a week, not a big deal. I mean, if you're hitting abs every single day, then you have potential for causing a back injury just because you're strengthening,
getting super strong in the front, and no reps in the back.
Yeah, not strengthening your posterior chain, so that can get kind of dangerous. But I think that's totally you do you, boo. Whatever you want to do. If you're keeping it light and making it. It's just like everything else. You just have to make sure that you're supporting your spine appropriately. So bracing as you're doing whatever ab exercise you want to do, which is a whole nother can of worms. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking whenever I saw that. Maybe I was thinking about Russian twists and ab mat sit-ups. I think those are kind of overrated. Doing GHG sit-ups, those are overrated too. I don't really know where I was going with that one whenever I put that in there before, but
yeah,
some of that stuff is overrated and underrated. It's just it's hard to do it correctly, even in a class full of people. When we try to make sure everybody's doing it correctly, stuff kind of falls apart as you go through a workout.
I think this one actually is a good one to talk about because it is one that when people are considering doing extra, that's always where they go.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do a whole bunch of ab stuff because I want to have more visible abs when I take my shirt off at the beach. That's just where a lot of people go when they start talking about doing extra. And so they get into this on their own time. And I think that's the important part of the conversation is consider the fact that your core goes all the way around. So if you, like you already said, if you're getting super strong in the front, but you're not doing anything extra for the back, you're going to end up with some imbalances there
Or
that
the sides.
you'll probably start causing you back pain or hip pain or something like that.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, for sure. And you train your abs in basically everything you do. Whenever
Yeah.
you like lift heavy or everything, like they get hit.
Yeah.
A lot of people with shredded cores don't really do that much ab exercise, ab
just
work.
super lean.
They just lift heavy and they're really lean.
Yeah.
Um.
All right. The shake weight.
Oh man.
Does the shake weight have any value?
I think we can all agree that's useless.
Okay, let's just move on
Let's
from that
just
one.
move on. Yeah, overrated. I don't think it's even rated anymore. I don't think it exists.
Go ahead.
Ryan had a good one about like the core stuff. He said face planks, which I think he
planks.
meant. I think he
Oh,
meant
those
like
Chinese planks?
face down Chinese planks.
Yeah.
So like the Chinese plank you can do face up or face down, and so that just means you have your shoulders on one bench and you have your feet on another bench, and you're just suspending yourself by keeping your core tight and trying to basically kind of arch your body away from the ground, either on your back or on either face down or face up. And I like that one. It's a good one. I wouldn't say that it's like underrated.
Yeah, you don't see that one very much, so you'd almost want to say underrated.
Yeah, but it's not like it's not like a super duper great. I mean, it's good, but you just sprinkle it in like once every 3 or 4 weeks if you want. It's not something that's gonna, I don't think, make or break any performance or anything like that.
I would call it a weird one though, because
Yeah, it's
when you
definitely a
see
weird
somebody face down, like
It's-
trying to hold a position, it does look silly.
Yeah, it's good for it's good for novelty. Like whenever you get bored of doing the same old shit, throw on some Chinese
face planks.
Yeah.
All right, Smith machine squats. We don't even have a Smith machine,
No, we
so I guess
don't.
that tells you probably how we feel about Smith machine stuff. Is there a value? Maybe that's the way we need to approach this one. Is there a value for Smith machine squats?
I think if you're trying to, like, if you're specifically trying to bring up a certain body part, because it can force you into certain positions. Like if you want to train your glute really hard, well, you can sit yourself. You can either do a hip thrust in a Smith machine if you want. I've never done that, so I don't really know how the trajectory, the bar path of that works out. If it's
Well, if you get a good Smith machine, it'll give
beneficial.
you
It's on a
up
slant.
and slide. So if you get a good Smith
yeah.
machine, the cheap ones wouldn't work. But
No.
if you get one that actually does go through the X and Y axis at the same time, then it would be good. But
why don't you just use a free barbell?
well, because then you avoid the
I guess
Z axis.
falling out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right? I'm on
There's
video
only
now
X
talking
and
about.
Y axes.
No, that's your 2-dimensional plane. But if you include the 3-dimensional
Oh,
plane,
you're
then you've got.
talking
I think that's Z.
Oh, I've never even heard
Yeah,
that.
so you got your X and your Y, but then if you're talking about 3-dimensional, then Z would be forward and back. It's like when you're talking about, the word just escaped me, but you're talking about exercises that go forward and back versus
The
exercises that
planes,
go side to side.
frontal,
Yeah,
transverse, sagittal. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Right on. So it keeps you from turning a sagittal plane exercise into a frontal or a transverse.
Or it'll keep you in just the frontal and sagittal without having to worry about the. We're getting off topic.
Okay.
But it could be valuable.
Yeah, it's not necessary. Like if that's what you walk into a gym, you're like, they don't have a Smith machine. Nah, I'm not signing up. Like that's not necessary by any means. I don't know. I guess if you want to like grow your butt or grow your quads a certain way, you can do it. I think it's definitely overrated as far as like the cost of it.
Yeah.
The piece of equipment is just way too damn expensive. You can do it. You you can wedge a barbell into a corner and load some plates on it if you want to do like a hack squat variation, which is what a lot of people do on Smith machines. But the problem with Smith machines is that people just want to do a regular squat on a Smith machine. That's the one thing that it's not good for. So like it's designed to be able to help you do a squat, but that's the exact one thing that you should not do on it, because it doesn't allow your personal leverages to move how your body wants to as you go up and down.
There's value for the Smith machine, but there's so many better ways to do squats.
Yeah.
Okay. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I guess I think of maybe the hip sled or any of those leg press machines. If you're doing something like that in a locked in position, you'd probably be better off to use one of those machines as opposed to the Smith machine. It'd be way more comfortable for sure, because you wouldn't have to worry about the bar on your shoulders. So
yeah,
overrated.
It's kind of a waste of money in a gym, I would think.
If you're looking at it in terms of equipment cost, it's drastically overrated.
Yeah, unless somebody out there can say something to change our minds.
Yeah,
feel free to chime up.
We're always open-minded.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. All right, let's start loading these up a little bit. Actually, let's say Jefferson curls. That one can be body weight, and so we could use that one as our transition. So Jefferson curls essentially is like the world's worst deadlift. Is like what we like to call it sometimes, just to like help people understand what they should do, because we do these a lot in warm-ups. And so like we say, do the world's worst deadlift. So round your neck, your shoulders, bring your shoulder blades forward, curl all the way to the ground. And it's called a Jefferson curl, not a Jefferson deadlift. Those are two different things. We gotta like be sure to keep those separate.
Yeah.
But
so we use Jefferson curls.
Yeah. And so the Jefferson curl is great for helping to actually loosen up the vertebrae in the back, and it's a great warm-up exercise, and it's also great for people who have some low back pain. It's a good movement to help them get some, if they are tight in the posterior chain and don't have like a flexion intolerance. So a flexion intolerance would mean that if you were hunched forward and that movement does not cause pain for you, but you kind of have pain whenever you extend your back, then a Jefferson curl could be a good kind of counterbalance to that extension to help strengthen on the other side of your spine. Yeah. It's also good for people with some flexion intolerance, just to kind of get to that point where it hurts just a little bit and then back off of it, just to get some movement out of the back.
I would say this one is wildly underrated in the CrossFit space.
Yeah.
Specifically because it seems to me that CrossFitters have just been indoctrinated with this idea that you should never flex your spine ever.
Yeah.
It's of course, if you're on a really heavy barbell, or if you there's tons of times when you want to stabilize your spine for whatever exercise you're doing, but there is just so much emphasis on hip hinge in the CrossFit space that it seems like there's no value placed on actually flexing your spine and actually finding ways to strengthen that flexion type of thing. And I think that's super valuable, because you don't just go around all day with a perfectly straight back all the time. And I think it is kind of silly how some in the CrossFit space act like that's the worst thing you can do. Yeah, worst thing you can do is ever flex your spine.
Yeah,
I would say it's underrated.
Yeah, I think it's underrated. But I think the reason that it may, so I kind of would like to play devil's advocate to that. The reason it's probably underrated in CrossFit is because people in CrossFit want to go heavy and they want to challenge themselves in whatever they're doing. So like if we started bringing the Jefferson deadlifts out, they'd be like, oh yeah, I can do 225 on a Jefferson curl. And it's like, oh shit, man.
Let me max out my Jefferson curl.
That should be like 50 pounds at most.
Yeah, this is definitely not
a
max
weighted
lift at all.
Yeah, it's meant as like, you can do it for reps for sure, but it's not meant to be done a whole lot with like a lot of weight multiple times a week or anything like that. It's great. It's a great like lightweight warm up exercise. It's perfect with like a 15 or 20 pound kettlebell and just curl down, curl up. It's great.
Yeah. I've actually used it quite a few times as a training tool, like because if I have somebody that's having trouble understanding the hip hinge, I'll take them through a Jefferson deadlift and like basically do all of the specific wrong things to try to give them some contrast of how not to do a proper deadlift.
Yeah.
And that's helped in several cases for me.
Yeah.
But it's once again, I think it's one where you're going to do both on a daily basis. Obviously, if we're trying to lift heavy weights, we don't do that.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a great warm up. I think it's a great stretch. That's probably all I got to say about that.
Yeah, that's all I got to say about that. Yeah, Jefferson curls underrated for sure. Let's move on to some other name, and then we'll come back to Jefferson the deadlift or lift or whatever it's officially called. I'm not really sure. We'll explain it when we get there, though, just to have some separation between these two. So let's do Turkish get up.
Okay. Yeah, that one actually came up a couple of times
Yeah.
in my Instagram poll.
Yeah. And I guess maybe somebody talking about it kind of put the seed in my mind. That's why we did them in the warm-up today. So I was like, I guess I was like lingering in the back of my head, so I threw them in there. I don't know. But, man, I love me some Turkish get-ups. Go ahead, Michael.
I think they're good. It's definitely one of those ones, you're not trying to do Turkish get-ups for time. You're not trying to do 1 rep max Turkish get-ups, but it's a great warm-up exercise. It's a great one for movement in the shoulder, and I don't know. It definitely works shoulder stability and flexibility. Yeah. It works. To me, I think one of the benefits is kind of working on your movement pattern, getting up and down off of the ground, because when I can slow people down and give them a step-by-step thing, it's a smooth way to work on transitioning from the floor to standing up and reverse. It's kind of and it definitely will expose some weaknesses and tightnesses and give you some ideas of things that you can afford to work on.
Yeah.
I like it. I would say it's underrated simply because I don't see it a whole lot, and it's awkward, so people avoid it.
Yeah,
so I would say it's underrated for that reason.
People love to avoid the awkward because it's not like a super sexy movement. You're not moving fast.
You're specifically moving slow on this one.
You can't really go that heavy. I think it's heavily underrated in just the regular like workout space, but it's super underrated in elderly populations, I would think. I think it's something that's super important. Like the older you get, this should be something that you should be working on because it teaches you how to get up, and you quickly gain strength in those positions. So you realize, oh, this is like really easy to get up this way if I just kind of go through these steps. But so if you're not sure what a Turkish get-up is, we're not going to explain all the steps to it because there's quite a few.
Do a quick Google search.
Yeah, but the Turkish get-up is amazing for, like Michael said, working on that shoulder stability. And then just like with the bear crawl, you're kind of bracing your core, working on stabilizing that shoulder while everything else is moving while you're working your way up to standing and then back down to the ground.
I think a lot of us as adults don't give a whole lot of value to training movement patterns like this because, I think once like I mentioned earlier, once you learn how to crawl, then you learn how to walk, and you don't ever go back. Yeah. This is one of those ones that you kind of undervalue because you don't really think about getting up and down off the ground until you get to a point in life to where you're having trouble getting up and down off the ground, and then you start thinking about it again. But it's one of those things that you should, we need to do these things. That's one of the values of burpees, in my opinion, is actually working on getting up and down off the ground smoothly.
Yeah.
And if you're in your 30s and you're in good shape, you don't really think about how important that is, but
you just pop up.
Yeah.
Turkish get-ups, underrated all around. They're awesome. Let's see. What's next for you?
Bottoms up kettlebell press. I think that translates. It's kind of a similar movement. I think this is one of those ones that I have never really seen a whole lot of value to the bottoms up kettlebell press, but you have talked some sense into me with this one. I know you've told me, I asked you about this one last week. Do you care about this one? I think in my mind in the past, I always thought about it like more from a beginner's perspective. I always thought, well, if you're trying to strengthen the shoulder and overhead pressing movements, you'd be better off to just use a heavier weight and actually work on the strength. And so I thought this one it felt kind of gimmicky to me, but I know you were talking a lot about balance in the shoulder girdle and things like that. So I'm coming around. I definitely poo-pooed this one a few years ago and kind of looked at it as just gimmicky shit that I saw online, but I'm coming around.
Yeah, I think this one's definitely really underrated. It's very similar to kind of like with the Turkish get up. You're working on that shoulder stability while you're trying to lengthen and shorten your arm. So it's basically like a strict press with a dumbbell, but you're holding a kettlebell and the weight of the bell is face up towards the sky. So you start with a handle down by your shoulder and then press straight up, trying to press slowly and kind of correcting any wobble that happens while it's on its way up or down. So like you can't do these for speed. They have to be slow. I think it's really great, especially for people who may have one weaker side. It's a good one to do like an extra set on that weaker side or extra reps on that weaker side to help bring it up to speed with the opposite side. Helps teach stability, so it can translate well to like walking on your hands or something, because you have all those there's a lot of tiny muscles around the shoulder, and so if you're always pressing with a barbell or even just with a pair of dumbbells and you're just going straight up, straight down, straight up, straight down, you're not really getting much of that balance work in the shoulders. Whereas if you do a single leg movement, you're getting that balance work because you have no option on the single leg, whereas we don't really do a lot of like single arm work that requires balance. And so I think it helps train the balance of your upper body. I like it for that.
Then does that transition us into Bosu ball exercises?
Oh man, yeah.
So this is one that's, if I was going to talk trash about the bottoms up kettlebell press, I definitely talk trash about the Bosu ball squat. So I was wondering if you could talk me into anything valuable with the Bosu ball squat.
For like rehab purposes, yeah. I think it's really good for people coming back from like either an injury or a surgery to repair any tissues in upper or lower body. It could kind of be utilized just to work on some of that balance and stability.
Well, I'll take that as a rehab exercise.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to have to say it's wildly overrated.
Yeah,
because I see this
sure.
one way too often in situations where somebody's standing on the Bosu ball upside down with a barbell on their back or a barbell overhead. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, like it's not meant to be something that you like add a lot of weight to. I mean, I guess if you're like super fit and you just want some sort of extra challenge because you're like really stable and really fit, but if you're not just strong already, then add some damn weight to your bar and put your feet on the ground, develop some strength, and then you can start standing on the wobbly ball to try to see if you can expose any weaknesses there.
Yeah.
It's just not necessary. Like, it's another one of those things that people wind up more in danger than they do actually getting a good training effect out of it, I think.
I'd put somebody on a Smith machine before I put them on a Bosu ball.
Yeah. Like, I can see a little bit of carryover with it. Like, I had a lady that I trained at Health Point, and we did some things on the Bosu ball, and I think it did kind of, but she was older, and I think it did kind of help her work on, like, stabilizing and building stability in the hips, knees, and ankles, and a little in the shoulders. But it's more so for those purposes. Like, if you're developing, I mean, I think if you develop strength, you don't really need the Bosu ball, because like you're going to be strong anyway. And so like you're going to get on a Bosu ball and be like, yeah, I'm pretty strong, so I could probably just stand here and hang out. And if you're building those muscles, you're going to gain some balance anyway. So
the way a Bosu ball is intended to be used is with the flat plastic part on the floor, and then you stand on the ball itself, right?
I think it's meant for either way.
Is
no,
it?
It's a lot of times it's the other way. A lot of times you stand on it, you put the round part on the floor, and then you stand on the flat,
the hard plastic part.
Because it's like.
Okay.
But yeah, it the round part is more so for like doing like planking exercises and things like that. You can stand on it, but it puts your ankles in a weird like sideways position.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't think that's especially dangerous if you tried to stand on that part of it, on the fluffy part. I don't know. It has its time and place, but it's not necessary. Kind of like the Smith machine.
Okay. All right. So you got the next one.
Okay.
Ooh. We skipped over dead bugs when we were talking about body weight stuff.
Oh, I didn't even have that in mind. Okay.
What do you think about dead bugs? I know we do a lot of dead bugs here at Boot Heel CrossFit.
Yeah, I would say.
What's the value of dead bugs?
I would say they're exactly what the bear crawl, the value of the bear crawl, the dead bugs, pretty much the same thing. You can do a lot with a dead bug. You can train core stability while your limbs are moving. You can help increase your hip flexor strength if the hip flexors happen to be weak somehow. It can teach you how to extend your legs, squeeze your butt, and keep your belly tight all in one. It can help build shoulder flexion, which is the part of the dead bug when you take your arm overhead and pull it down towards the ground, which gets neglected a lot. Usually people just kind of bring their arm up. They don't actually try to pull back into a really flexed position, and that part is super overlooked, especially like when you use that as a warm-up. People just kind of like let their limbs fly and do whatever, and don't try to actually like brace and lock in each of those positions. So I think it's underrated and often done incorrectly.
So dead bugs and bird dogs are kind of in the same category.
Yes.
It's almost like face up versus face down, working very similar ranges of motion and intentions. Yeah,
and I think the really important thing is with both of those movements is that the whole purpose of them is to teach core stability while your limbs are moving. That's a very, very important thing that just gets neglected in a lot of spaces. And so it's a great warm-up for things like squats or deadlifts or pull-ups or absolutely anything where you need to brace your core while you are moving load with the rest of your body. So that's the most important thing and the most misunderstood thing. I think why people are like, that's weird, why are we doing this? So like that's the whole purpose of it.
Yeah, and we'll wrap it up with this at the end whenever we get done, but I'll go ahead and say now that I think the important part to consider here is that context matters. With all of this stuff that we're talking about, context matters.
Yeah, a dead bug doesn't make any sense if you're not bracing your back and squeezing your butt and everything. It doesn't make sense.
And that would throw us back to the podcast we did a few weeks ago about intention.
Yeah.
Context and intention really matters a lot when it comes to talking about these weird exercises.
Yeah, for sure. So this is one that I absolutely think it has time and place, perhaps for somebody that is fresh out of the gate and has not developed any strength really in just about anything, is combining like a lower body movement with an upper body movement of like a single limb or a single joint that is very easy. So first thing that comes to mind is like doing a lunge with a bicep curl.
Oh, like some of the, what is it, like those beach body things that you see on Instagram and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You do see a lot of that. Like you got a pair of 3-pound dumbbells and you're lunging and then standing up and doing bicep curls or overhead press or something.
Yes, yeah. Doesn't make any damn sense. Because
shots fired. Let's get that out of the way.
Well, I mean, think about it this way. Your legs are so much more powerful than your biceps. And so if you're going to do a lunge, you want to get some benefit out of it. Load the damn lunge up or, do more. You could do bicep curls with like a 3-pound or
you could do that all day long
or 10 or whatever. You can do it all day long. It just doesn't make sense to combine those two movements when you can put more effort or more load into something that is more challenging. Now, that being said, somebody that, body weight lunges are very difficult and perhaps like a 5-pound weight on a curl is kind of challenging as well, like then it can maybe have some time and place, but I mean, you see people that are like really fit, or like they're past that newbie stage, and it's like, okay, time to put some weight on there.
They're
Time
just
to
doing
like
this straight through for like 8 minutes.
Yeah,
and it's
time
like,
to develop some strength now. On both those things, like it can have its time and place. If it's fun, awesome. Like keep doing it. If you just really really enjoy those things, then
well, that
sure.
makes me think of this stuff I'm seeing with the Peloton exercises. I guess that's part of it. You know, obviously you've got the bike thing, but then apparently there's a 3-pound dumbbell thing where you're doing like press up and then come around and then curl, and it's like this weird combo of exercises that you're just doing for 8 minutes straight or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's probably what we're talking about here. Is you'd be better off to
do one
get
of
a
those
little more
movements.
get some extra weight, maybe do 1 or 2 of those instead of 9 at a time.
yeah. Or like, you know, it's when you throw something in that like should be like a warm-up movement into a workout where it's just it's hard to like get an efficient workout done. You just think about how much more progress you could make if you would do like a 40-pound lunge for reps, and then put that down, and then do some other compound movement, and then, you know, back and forth between those 2 compound movements. And then when you're done with your workout, throw in some bicep burnouts or something. Like you're gonna have a much more effective workout by hammering the compounds with some actual load, and then breaking off and doing single joint movements and isolation
kind
movements like that, like kind of on
separately.
their own. Yeah. Just that's will kind of bring about more benefit. But yeah, like pressing out into a Y and then you try to load that up even heavier or something like this, it's not, your shoulder's not really meant to like hold something out in a Y position. And the problem with a lot of those things is like there's nobody there teaching you to do it correctly. So as you kind of start developing strength, you might be developing imbalances. Like your shoulders could be in bad positions or something, and you're like, oh God. And then you get into a gnarly position, or you develop strength in ranges that aren't necessarily the best for your body mechanics or something. So it's just there's more effective ways to do those things.
So the other weird one that I think this is the only other weird one that I got on my Instagram was hip thrusts. And I guess we already kind of talked about that with the Smith machine, but what's the value of hip thrusts? I guess it's awkward, you know, you're
it is awkward.
humping the air. So if you're in a normal gym doing hip thrusts, or I guess it's becoming more commonplace now, but 5 years ago, if you were hip thrusting in a normal gym, you'd probably end up on World Star or one of those workout fail websites.
Fail army. Hip thrusts are definitely. I mean, I think they're just about right now. I think if people see the value in them, I think in a CrossFit gym they're underrated just because it's difficult to get a class of people doing hip thrusts, but it's very beneficial. Like it's a movement that can translate really well to the deadlift, to the squat, to basically anything, because it helps isolate the glute and the hamstrings and gets the core activating while you're squeezing your glute and moving into that movement. It's done incorrectly a lot.
There are definitely some idiosyncrasies to this one that need to kind of be figured out.
This is why something like the hip thrust gets really difficult to do with a class full of people, but it's a very beneficial movement. So if you can like work on it and develop it on your own, you'll probably see either your deadlift or your squat kind of skyrocket, depending on if you're really quad dominant in your squat or something, you kind of hit a plateau and you start doing some hip thrusts, and then all of a sudden you strengthen the backside and you're like, woo, look at that. I added 30 pounds to my squat just because you're developing the backside, isolating the backside of your body.
Yeah.
And then same on the deadlift. Like if you just kind of have a really weak deadlift, hip thrust can help bring that up.
I know the hip thrust has gotten a lot more popular over the last few years, but I think I would still say it's underrated because it does take some extra focus and intention to kind of understand how to do it right.
Yeah.
Obviously, we use it as warm-ups in here relatively frequently, just unloaded, just as kind of warming up for a deadlift or a squat or something like that.
Bridges.
But glute bridges, things like that. But if you put some focus and some intention into improving your hip thrust and actually started adding weight to it and doing some progressive overload with it, you'd see massive benefits in a lot of different areas. And so for that reason, I would say it's still underrated.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, the hip thrust is something like you should be able to hip thrust your max deadlift.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty, I mean, possibly for reps for a lot of people if you train it consistently and regularly. It's something that just really helps. It gets you under a heavier load for reps and helps kind of develop that CNS connection where you're like, all right, I feel strong with this. Surely I can pick this up off the ground. And then, yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the hip thrust is definitely underrated. Brace your core when you do a hip thrust. Everybody neglects to do that. All right. It looks on my list is down to one. Or no, I forgot the other Jefferson too.
The Jefferson deadlift.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the Jefferson deadlift and the Jefferson curl?
So a Jefferson deadlift is where you like straddle the bar and then pick it up between your legs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was called the Jefferson deadlift.
Or Jefferson
I've seen
lift.
that.
I don't know.
I think I've only seen that once or twice. It was the Lift Big Eat Big guy on Instagram. I remember seeing him do that years ago. No. It was the one behind the back. He would actually stand in front of the bar, reach behind him, and do some weird, funky deadlift like that.
That one's even weirder. Okay, so these are interesting. So
I didn't even think about that.
This is funny. This would be the one that like the person doing the lunge and bicep curl will be like, "What is that? You're gonna hurt your back." And like.
So this is the one where you're straddling the bar and you basically stand up and pull the bar straight into your crotch.
Yes.
So if you've got short arms, this is not short arms and a long torso.
Yeah.
This would not be the lift for you.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Some people aren't able to do it just because of their leverages, but so the Jefferson deadlift I think is actually highly underrated.
I've never even tried it. Never have.
The Jefferson deadlift, you straddle the bar and your hands grab the bar on basically in the same grip that you would grab for a conventional deadlift. So you have one leg in the front, one leg behind the bar, but your shoulders and hips, or your shoulders are still facing forward. Hips are actually kind of in a little bit of a twisted position. But the whole purpose of the lift is to take some of the stress off the low back because it places the bar directly beneath your center of gravity. And you know, when you do a deadlift, sometimes if the bar gets out in front of you a little bit, it brings the weight further forward of your center of gravity, and that can be bad news bears if you have low back pathology of some sort, so some sort of injury or pain in the low back. So this one can actually be a pretty good one to help train out of that. Because you straddle the bar, you pick it up, you're trying to not let the bar rotate in your hands, which is difficult to do. So you can't do these like super heavy. Some people can do them super heavy once they've built up the resiliency to it, but you're trying to keep the bar from twisting while you're lifting it so it teaches bracing and anti-rotation in the spine.
So this one would definitely get the Z-axis involved.
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to the body, it's frontal, sagittal, and transverse. So yeah, you get a little bit of...
I'm looking up pictures of this, and it looks pretty crazy.
A little bit of all of it. Yeah.
You want to sanitize this bar when you're done using it.
Yeah, it's really weird. So you can look it up. There's probably a lot of people out there like, don't do that. But, it has its time and place.
Context matters.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it can be beneficial. But you just have to make sure that you're, switching sides. So anytime you have your right leg in front, do a set with your left leg and kind of even it out. Yeah, it has its time and place. It's an odd one.
I'm actually going to have to try this one. This is one exercise I've never even tried before. And so I'll have to try it just to see what it feels like, to see how awkward it really does feel. Because it looks crazy. Just
from listening, if you've never seen it before or studied up on it, don't listen to this description and then just go do it. Like you need to set your feet in the correct position, make sure that you're pressing off the floor appropriately. The back leg, the back leg's kind of like in a sumo almost sumo position. Well, both legs kind of are in almost a sumo position because you're out kind of wider with your stance. So it's interesting. Just make sure that you really do some research on it before you try to throw it into your program or something.
And obviously, start small,
Yes.
build up over time if you're
Yeah.
going to play with this one.
Exactly. Okay, now we have one more. The Zercher.
Zercher squats.
Yeah.
This one did come up on my Instagram. I forgot about this one. I guess I didn't screenshot this one. So the Zercher squat is the one where you're actually holding the bar in the crook of your elbows, almost like you're doing a bicep curl. You got the bar in the crook of your elbows, and you're holding it there while you're squatting. So this is one that's, I think it shows up in strongman training. Maybe it may actually be a strongman event. I'm not sure, but I've only seen it in that space because, for one, it's really uncomfortable to have the bar in the crook of your elbows like that. So it can get better by working with a fat bar, like an axle bar or something like that. That makes it easier to control. But that's really the only context I've ever seen the Zercher squat really show up in. But I guess it really is just another front-loaded squatting movement, another front-loaded accessory exercise.
Yeah.
And so I can see some benefit to it. I have done these in the past. I never did go back to them because they were uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
I experimented with Zercher squats, and
Yeah.
I could see it being another tool in the toolbox, I guess. But
Yeah.
as far as overrated versus underrated, I'm not even sure I could go one way or the other because they hardly ever show up anywhere.
It's not rated.
I can see other ways to get a front-loaded squat, so I don't even really want to rate this one. You could do front squats, you could do goblet squats. There's a ton of ways that you could load the front of your body to do squats that would be more comfortable than this. So I don't really have a rating for it.
Yeah. Same. You just don't see it very often. I could see it in, so it's a strong, and so is the Jefferson squat, deadlift, whatever you want to call it, the one between the legs. That's what it is. It's called a Jefferson squat. I kept saying deadlift and stuff. So the Jefferson.
Well, I googled Jefferson deadlift and something came up, so maybe it goes by both.
Maybe so. Between the leg one it's often called a squat. I don't think there's any official name for it, but.
Yeah. It shows up the same way for Jefferson squat.
Yeah. So that the Jefferson and the Zercher were both developed by strongmen, I think, to help get better at the strongman lifts. The Zercher definitely has carryover for strongman training. So if you're a strongman competitor, you definitely need to do it.
Because that's one of their events, I guess, is the, what do they call it? The Husafell stone, where they get that big coffin-shaped rock or piece of concrete that they've got to carry for distance or for time or something like that. So you've got this massive piece of concrete there in the crooks of your elbows. Yeah. So I could see the Zercher being a good training tool for improving your Husafell stone carry.
Mm-hmm. Or if you have which usually doesn't really happen, but if you have too much extension in your upper back or a weak upper back, it can be helpful for developing your upper back musculature because you're forced in that position to try and kind of stay upright with that load. You're naturally going to curl into it a little bit, of course, but
I think I'd still give you a heavy kettlebell.
Yeah.
If you do a front.
Yeah, front rack carry. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Could be useful for firefighters, EMTs, people that are going to carry stuff in the crooks of their arms. Could be a useful training tool
there's a place for it.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I guess the only other one I've got on my list I almost skipped over, but the Continental Clean. So that's I think that's one that's pretty specific to strongman. Those types of things, because I think the Continental Clean really only makes sense when you're talking about a big, thick axle bar, one that you can't really get your hands around and get a good grip. So you almost need to cross one hand or turn one hand over so that you can switch your grip to get it off the ground. Yeah. It's one that looks really super weird. You should Google this one. Google Continental Clean and look how crazy and awkward and dangerous this one looks. But it makes sense in the context of strongman competition, because in order to make this work, I guess in strongman competition, they're working with a big, thick axle bar that you can't get your hands around. You can't get a good grip on it with a double overhand, but you got to get this thing up to your shoulders. So to get it off the ground, you almost have to switch grip. And then if you're wearing a big, thick leather belt, you can deadlift this thing up and pop it up to where it's on top of that leather belt on your stomach. And then from there, you can wiggle around and get your hands underneath it and get it up to the pressing position. So it's a very specific competition lift that's obviously has to be trained in order to get decent at it, but it does look crazy when you're doing it.
Yeah, it looks wild.
Yeah. I wouldn't use it as a training tool,
Yeah.
but if you're going to compete, you need to know how to do it, and you'd have to train it for that reason.
It's definitely unnecessary for any other. Maybe again for like firefighters, EMTs, if they need to work on getting stuff up to shoulders and up high or something. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I think something that's often not understood within strongman stuff is that they're like, oh man, that all looks super dangerous. I'm like, yeah, it kind of is, because these guys are lifting thousands of pounds and they're doing a lot of flexion and extension in the spine. But the important part to remember is that your spine is meant to flex and extend. Your mid spine and up. Lumbar spine, not really meant to flex and extend. And that's the reason it's lower down, and you just don't really get much flexion and extension out of the lumbar spine. So that's where those weight belts kind of come in handy and help prevent them from really rounding and opening up the lumbar spine. Whereas the upper spine, it's kind of meant to do those things. And so, if you want to train flexing and extending your spine, that's fine. It's just, when you get into the upper limits of your capabilities, that's where stuff gets dangerous. That's why there's so many injuries in sports like that, because they're pushing their limits. And so, it's fine to do those things with submaximal loads, but not cool to do it when you're under a heavy barbell or something like that. So, just, it's all in context.
Yeah. Let's see. I know you had put on the list, you said stretching already flexible muscles and movements. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I don't know why I put that. I think I may have meant to put that in like other stuff.
Oh, okay.
Maybe, but I mean, we can talk about it since you brought it up. I think this is.
What would you say about that one? That was just the last thing on my list.
Yeah, maybe I meant to put that just as an idea to talk about in the future, but yeah, it's something cool to hit on.
We could wrap it up there. Yeah.
We could talk more about it later on, but when you see people doing a lot of stretches and stuff and they're like touching their nose to their knee or something, or people that are able to get to like hyper flexible ranges of motion, why are you stretching?
That would be overrated,
yes,
for sure. If you're already flexible.
Maybe that's where it was going. It's overrated. So stretching, that's what I meant. Yes, thank you, Michael. Stretching is overrated when you're already flexible in a certain position, unless you need it for like sport or something. Like if you're hyper flexible and you can like fold down and touch your nose to your toes or something, and it's comfortable for you, like you just like to hang out there, cool, but you don't really have any need to keep trying to go further and further, because then you can just get weaker and weaker in those excess ranges of motion. People like that need to work more so on strengthening that range of motion that they have gained.
I guess that would be like ballet dancers.
Yeah, they need to be really flexible.
Gymnasts, there's definitely a kind of a minimal amount of flexibility that they need. They need to be pretty flexible. But what doesn't get talked about as much is how much time they have to spend on their strength there as well. Because when you get in some of those really extended positions, you're pushing the limits of your body. So you need to be really specific to make sure you're strong enough to be in that really flexible position.
Yeah.
So it almost comes down to the people that like to do the stretching, flexible stuff probably don't need to do it nearly as much. And the people that hate to do it are the ones that need it the most, because they're the ones that, are too tight to get into the positions they should be able to get into. But a lot of these people that are more naturally flexible, you're there. You don't need to do a whole lot more flexibility training.
Exactly. So. Like, it's important to have a big range of motion, but it's also important to be strong in the range of motion that you have. Like, you have to own the ranges that you have.
There it is. That sums it up very nicely. Yeah. Context matters for sure.
Yeah, right on.
Is that a stopping point?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we wrapped it up there.
We've rambled a long time.
So weird exercises, there's a lot of value for it in context.
If we said anything was underrated and didn't give a good reason why we thought so, and you disagree, please give us a shout out.
Yeah, let us know.
We love to have the conversation. We're not going to try to prove you wrong. We want to know what your view is.
Well, hell, I've had a lot of my ideas. I mean, hell, we were talking about, what was it? The bottoms up kettlebell press. I found some new information on it. I got some new perspective and some new context, and I can see some value to it now. So I'd really love to hear a perspective that I hadn't heard on any of these things that maybe I talked a little smack about, because you might change my mind.
That's how I used to feel about the Jefferson squat, the one between the legs. Like, I would see people doing it. I'm like, what the? Why would you do that? And then I like dug more into it. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I can see some value.
Just like all of it, like we gave a reason to do all of it for whatever reason you may have.
Yeah. I want somebody to talk me into a really good reason to do the Bosu ball squat. I know you gave me a couple of specifics, but I want somebody to talk me into this really
Not
strongly.
Super necessary.
Or the Smith machine.
Yeah. I think most importantly, you just need to when you're doing a movement and you're not sure why you're doing it, question it. Yeah. Question the coach, question yourself, question Google maybe. Be careful on Google, but question why am I doing this and why am I not doing something else instead? So having that understanding of whatever is in your programming.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up there. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.